Some dare call it conspiracy.
Welcome to Some Dare Call It Conspiracy with Brent Lee and Neil Sanders.
As the planet spirals into a fascist dystopia, we thought someone really should keep a record of this decline, so that when the aliens are sifting through the ashes of civilization, they might be able to see where it all went wrong.
This is The World According to Some.
Or as all the hepcats are calling it, T.W.A.T.S. So Candace Owens appears on the talk show of Tucker Carlson, and they immediately start talking about Nick Fuentes. Now, what happened was Carlson asked Owens about this recent interview that did with Fuentes, which she said was an entirely fraudulent experience. And what her gripe with this is that she says, the filming went great. It was all brilliant. But then when she published the video, apparently Fuentes started screaming and calling her a bitch and saying she set it up and blah, blah, blah. And so she's actually taken the interview down. Carlson had an idea. He had a theory about this. He said that Fuentes is clearly part of a campaign to discredit non-crazy right-wing voices, said man who believes in physical demons, Tucker Carlson. And he went on to say that the reason he knows this, and this is a bit of an own goal, right? See if you could just follow this and track it and see at what point this all falls to bits. So Tucker Carlson said that he knows that Fuentes is just out there to discredit people because in the past, he's criticized Tucker by suggesting that his dad was a CIA operative. And this is what Tucker says. He says, and so Nick is being judged according to my experience with him. But what is this? Where does his funding come from? I probably shouldn't even say this, but the only reason I know who he is because someone sent me a video a few years ago of him attacking me. And attacking my dad. And I was like, So I'm looking at this and I'm like, well, first of all, this kid's really talented, like legit. And I can assess that that's just having done the job for so long. So, wow, lots of talent, native talent. But he's attacking my dad as a CIA agent, saying, oh, his dad's CIA or whatever. And I'm like, well, that's not true. And then when my father died, I learned that actually, he was involved in that world. And so, do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So Tucker's saying he's outrageously claiming that my father is CIA. I mean, my father was CIA, obviously, but I didn't know that at the time that I said that. And anyway, the interview goes on. Tucker says, he's clearly part of a campaign to discredit non-crazy right voices. That's obvious. I've been around a long time. I know it when I see it, says the man that interviewed someone that claimed to smoke crack and have sex with Obama. Anyway, Candace Owens goes on to say, I don't understand it. We were very kind to him. We felt like maybe he was a bit lonely and we should invite him back for dinner. That's how good of an experience I had. So either it's being driven from little boy insecurity and he was just so worried that he went on the attack because he doesn't know how to have normal relations after being banned everywhere. And Tucker says, yeah, I think there's kind of an angry gay kid thing going on there. And Candace goes, or it's what you're saying, where he's lying to everybody and pretending things are one way when they are not. I just love the bitchy shade that they all throw at each other. Some would say that it undermines them and their message. And I would say, no. You can't undermine their message any more than it is already. But this does add an extra layer of hilarity to it. So anyway, basically what happened was he went and did this interview with Candace and he publicized it and said that it was going to come out. And then she put it out behind a paywall. And so this is what caused the argument, or at least began the argument. And she shares a text message that Fuentes said that says, You're just coming across as totally psycho at this point. I think you're either extremely stupid or just a straight up bitch. Either way, I want nothing to do with you as a person for now. She then goes on to say that I can actually say my experience with Nick Fuentes is that he's a terrible person and a terrible human being, because why would you do that? There's no reason to do that. You could have come back onto the show. And it's like, she's so close. Yes, he's a terrible person, but not because of the gripe. It's the Nazi stuff, isn't it? That's the bad stuff, isn't it? And
according to her.
Well, Tucker then compares him to David Duke, which Nick would probably like, but he says that he's like David Duke is in what he does is he stands next to people. David Duke had this habit of basically turning up and getting photos with people, and then people would say, "Oh my God, you're associated with the Ku Klux Klan or whatever," or at least that was their story and that's what they're sticking to. But essentially, what Tucker Carlson's saying is, "Oh, Nick reputationally damages the right-wing movement," which
kind of reminded me of like Elon's excuse why he's in a picture with Ghislaine Maxwell.
She just photobombed him. It certainly wasn't there to ask about those karate lessons or whatever. Like, so yeah, this is it. Like, poor old Elon. Like, yeah. But so Nick reacts to all this. And he actually is quite clever about it, because he basically just avoids a lot of the stuff and sticks to, you'll see. But he basically he challenges Tucker to a debate, saying, if you have the balls to gossip about me and make snarky personal attacks, it's only right that I should be able to reply. And then he accuses Tucker of being a CIA agent. And he has a bit of evidence for this. He says that Tucker claims that he was shocked to discover that his dad was CIA upon his death in March 2025. But here he is in June 2024 admitting that his father was CIA. So why did he lie? And then it's essentially an interview that he did in 2024 that he says, I've taken a lot of crap, including from Putin. Like, oh, you're from a CIA family. Well, yeah, obviously, my father worked in conjunction with the CIA. I mean, I even tried to join the CIA, so I'm not being false about it. But, you know, attacking my dad as a CIA agent, and then, well, I'm like, that's not true. And then my father dies, and I learn, actually, yeah, you know, he was involved in that. And I was completely shocked. So no one has to believe me, but that's just a fact, right? And what's very interesting is that he uses almost exactly the same words that he uses to justify it with Candace in 2025. Like, so anyway, he apparently knew in 2024, and so Tucker Carlson's Tucker Carlson's story on when he discovered his father was a CIA agent has changed, which some people might see as suspicious. Now, there is one man who claims that he has the inside track on Tucker because they're so close friends, and he shouldn't have revealed this, but he did reveal this because he has a penchant for doing that sort of thing. Do you know who that man might be? Absolutely, Alex Jones. Now, because according to Alex Jones, and he's mentioned this on InfoWars, he said that Tucker confided in him, which is a phrase that means told him a secret on the understanding that he wouldn't tell anybody else. Well, Alex says that Tucker confided in him that he's been a secret CIA agent for years and even has been involved in actual gun battles and fighting in the jungle. Which jungle is not entirely clear. But yeah, Alex Jones has said that. So, you know, we know his track record of accuracy. But it just adds another sort of layer of what the bloody hell. Anyway, as we know, Tucker said in that interview, that was where he said that basically he was turned away from the CIA because he'd done cocaine in the months prior to applying. So he didn't get into it. Anyway, Nicholas Funtimes then decides that he's absolutely not bothered about this Tucker Carlson thing and this slight. He's completely not bothered at all. And to show that he's completely not bothered, he does a 3-hour-long reaction video. And at one point, he says, I'm accused of being because somehow, basically, the idea has now got back that maybe Nick is a Fed. Maybe he's either a federal agent or a CIA operative or somewhere like, an Operation Mockingbird type thing to discredit the right wing. Maybe that's the angle. And he says, I'm being accused of being the CIA by Peter Thiel's best boys, by Tucker Carlson with his daddy, Tucker Carlson. And you know what? Here's the other thing, Tucker. Tucker said, I'm a weird gay kid in the basement and I'm from Chicago. You're right. Well, okay. Well, I mean, you're not right about all of that, but I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. Tucker Carlson says, I have so many trust funds, I never have to work. Tucker went to a $45,000 per year private high school, then a $45,000 per year selective Ivy League school in New England. Tucker Carlson's daddy was a Reagan appointee. And then after years of bragging about being an elite, bragging about being so out of touch and so rich, now he's going to be the spokesperson for all the white people. Now he's going to roll up his sleeves. I just like to hunt and fish in my log cabin. And now they want to gatekeep me out and do this personality attack and say I'm a bitter loser in my basement in Chicago. And they slipped up there because they forgot for 1 second that they're pretending to be a spokesperson for exactly that kind of person. Tucker's mask slipped, and he forgot for a minute that for 8 years he's been pretending to care about the plight of weird kids in their parent basements who are broke and didn't go to an Ivy League school, living in cities that don't matter like Chicago, not like Washington or LA or New York. That's why he had such disdain and contempt for me in that moment, because the personality attacks. He's lonely, he's weird, he lives in a basement. I'm sorry, did you guys forget that that is your target audience that you're trying to pander to? And as odious as he is, he has got a point there. He then goes on to say, Candace Owens got married to British royalty worth $200 million after meeting him for 2 weeks on Zoom. What the fuck is even that about? And this is a reference to George Farmer. And we'll come on to it in a little bit. But essentially, Candace Owens... I'd met him like twice in I think 2 or 3 weeks before he proposed to her, and he proposed to her over Zoom. And there are people, certain people, as we will come on to later in this wonderful journey, that have, shall we say, doubts about the legitimacy of their marriage. But we'll come on to that in a bit. Nick goes on to say, Tucker's at Turning Point, USA, extolling the predatory nature of usury and how it's preventing young white men from getting homes. And then the week after, he says that you're in your mum's basement. So which is it? Unlike Candace Owens and Tucker, I never got a contract with Ben Shapiro and Rupert Murdoch. I was on Maker Support. I was on Patreon. I was on D-Live. I had to fight for everything I have. I didn't get $1 million contract from Turning Point. I didn't get $20 million from Fox News. My daddy didn't get me a job at Arkansas. Now, you did get $700,000 from a weird French guy, though. So, come on. He then does a second show saying, what else are you lying about, Tucker? If you lied that you didn't know your dad was CIA, are you lying that you were CIA or the extent of your cooperation with the CIA? That was a natural question. But we did more digging over the course of the last week, and we found about half a dozen other clips that Tucker knew and said publicly that his father was involved in the CIA. So I'll play this compilation for you right now, and we're going to react to it. This is the first clip. It's about 2 minutes, and I'll play this right now. All of this has come to light over the course of the past week, and this is a big reason why I did this show. So here it is. And then he shows this thing, and it's not actually, there's bits in it, but it's not as cut and dry as he says. But he says, so that's 2.5 minutes of Tucker Carlson over the course of 20 years talking about and getting caught at least in 2, maybe 3 explicit instances saying my dad was in the CIA. We lived down the street from the CIA officer that overthrew Mossadegh in Iran. I went to Vietnam with John McCain. I traveled to Pakistan with my father. I traveled to Nicaragua with my friends at the behest of my father. All these different clips paint a very interesting picture. 25 years going back to 1999, Tucker is saying, I was traveling internationally with my dad, who was in this world of Voice at America. If you pay attention, he says in the Sean Ryan interview that he said, my dad actually ran the Voice of America. And what is that? That's the CIA. Then something strange happens. Like Nick tweets out, Tucker and Candace said I'm hurting the right's credibility with my crazy views. And then they promptly continued their conversation about crypto transgenders, interdimensional aliens, and the Frankist conspiracy, which is exactly what they did. And we'll come on to that shortly. He then basically, Nick tweets out that Candace Owens, Elon Musk, Milo Yiannopoulos, and Tucker Carlson and Andrew Tate are all ganging up on him. And he has an idea about why this is and who might be behind this, what he calls a coordinated effort. Can you guess who he thinks might be the behind this?
Israel.
Close.
Trump.
No, a more sort of broad term for Israel.
Oh, Jews.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. He says, at the peak of my popularity, all of a sudden there's a coordinated smear campaign by the biggest conservatives who wouldn't give me the time of day a few months ago. This is what happens when you start naming names and talking about the Jews, not neocons, the Jews. So he's very, very clear about his views. And so this is why it's so reprehensible that people like Alex Jones would have him on, because if you have Nick Fuentes on your show, you are supporting statements like that. There's no way you can't be. That is what he's about. And to be fair, Elon and Milo were ganging up on him. Milo tweeted out, remember when Nick had his money frozen by the DOJ? Ask him how and he got them to unfreeze it. Answer, informing. Then ask when it was unfrozen. Ask for proof. He was lying to fans every day, taking cash off teens, claiming his account was frozen 6 months after he got it back. And Elon Musk responds by saying, it doesn't make sense that the FBI leaves Fuentes alone unless he is an asset of some kind. Dun, dun, dun. So, I mean, he was kind of right. They certainly were ganging up on him. I'm not sure that it was at the instigation of Jews. Candace Owens basically, she responds on Twitter, says, oh, here we go again, guys. Laugh my arse off. Nick talks trash about literally everyone claiming they're friends. But when the very people he speaks about reply to him, he says it's some high-level coordinated attack. Me coordinated with Elon Musk? Lol. Have you watched even a minute of my content? Owen stated, I maintain Nick Fuentes is a sheltered theatre kid who cries and lies pathologically. So Fuentes decides, fuck this, I'm going to get dirty with this. And so he calls out Candace for not acting against other people, specifically Milo. And what Nick Owen says is, speaking of George, why didn't you...
You said Nick Owen.
Oh, sorry. Nick Owen. Oh, yeah, the BBC guy. It's not him. Sorry. Nick calls out Candace Owens by saying, speaking of George, which is her husband, George Farmer, why didn't you press the paedophile Jew, Milo, for publicly calling your husband gay for years? If you're such a tough bitch like your granddad, where was that energy with your Jewish fixer? You're such a fake bitch. It's actually insane and everybody knows it. And what might this be in reference to? Well, for a period in 2024, Milo, who was then friends with Nick, but is now friends with Candace, decided to send out a series of tweets. One of them said, it was responding to someone said that the more you attack Candace after she's only become significantly better since leaving the Daily Wire, the more it just makes me think that you are the Zionist shill that everyone thinks you are. And Milo responds by saying, guess what? You can hate what the state of Israel does, and you can hate this retarded dark-skinned dyke and her gay husband at the same time. Glad I could help. In a separate tweet, Ian Miles Chong, who's a moron on the internet, tweets out, Candace Owens says that Jews worship Baphomet and that they practice paedophilia as part of their religion. What a complete fall from grace. And Milo says, in response, because there's a picture of her, how do you have a gay husband and still dress like this? In a further tweet, he says that I want to make something clear. Candace, when I said your husband was gay, I wasn't looking at him, I was looking at you. In a separate tweet, he says, it's disgraceful that Candace thinks that she has an F-slur pass simply because her husband is a Nancy boy. I mean, when I think of the work I had to put in for that thing. In a separate tweet, he said, Candace is a wealthy woman who could have done anything and had anything. Her marriage made almost anything possible for her, but she has a fatal flaw that resurfaces every time she's operating without strong male oversight. She doesn't know that she is completely stupid. He then said, at the Daily Wire, Candace was waxed, tweezed, plucked, and together, on course to maybe one day be as big as a network anchor in her own way, despite her obvious mental and emotional shortcomings, plus obviously the loco for Cocoa Puffs ice bitch vibe from having a gay husband. He also said, let me tell you something. Candace Owens' husband is getting plunged. And so remember this. I told you this is fascinating. And schoolyard and soap opera. This is just glorious. Anyway, and it gets worse. It gets so much worse. Anyway, so she's replying to Nick Fuentes, who basically says, like, why don't you pull up Milo when your apparent bestie now, when he was saying that your husband was gay. And she replied, I see that you're coming undone and trying to pivot here. Why don't you ask me about this in person instead of your usual virtual tough guy act where you throw wild allegations and claim everyone's trying to kill you? And basically she says that, like, she wants to set up a debate with Charlie Kirk as the moderator and debate Nick. And this is what's so transparent about this, is that basically they're all again seeing this as like, how can I spin this for me? How can I get more likes for me and more views for me and stuff like that? They've got no principles, no strong ideology. Well, like nothing that they will stick to. It's just grotty.
And what the hell are they even going to debate? They agree on like almost everything.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know, basically. Like, Nick responds and says, if that's a real offer, have Charlie Kirk confirm and maybe I'll consider it. Otherwise, you're just embarrassing yourself. Everyone knows you wouldn't be begging me to come back if your first hit job succeeded. It was always the loser asking for a rematch. So what was all this about? Right, okay. Basically, just prior to this, like a week earlier, a couple of weeks earlier, Nick had been on Candace's show. And she was just fucking rude to him. She was really rude to him. It was bizarre. Like, she'd invited him on. And they're previously, like, supported each other and apparently been friendly and whatnot and said nice things about each other. But it was strange. And Francis says, basically, this is typical of women. They gaslight, gatekeep, and girl boss. And he says that in this interview, Candace set him up. He says, I really didn't like how it went. I was disappointed. And by that, I mean, I was disappointed with how she handled it. I think it was good content. A lot of people enjoyed it. Candace then decides basically to describe Nick as the Israel of the right, saying he routinely attacks people for ostensibly no apparent reason, then plays a victim when people have a perfectly predictable response to being wronged. It's like, Jesus Christ. Like, she's like, so this is this interview. And there was actually a Candace Owens fan site that had a Substack. And even though she's a fan of Candace, the headline of this review of the interview says Candace Owens was crabby during her interview with Nick Fuentes. So we've all seen the classic interviewers. You know, we've seen Parkinson, we've seen like Letterman, we've seen people being able to disarm people with charm. Like Louis Theroux is particularly good at getting people to reveal things, and Candace decides to try her own particular tactics. Do you want to have a sort of rough ballpark guess of where how she opened the interview? I'll be amazed.
You don't hate Jews as much as I do.
That would have been better, I think. She decided to open up the show by saying, "Nick, welcome to the Candace Show. You talk a lot of shit." And this review goes on to say, granted, it was said with a smile, but this opener foreshadowed Candace's ill-tempered, heavy-handed, mum-splaining, nitpicking grouchiness that characterized the whole conversation. So prior to this, Candace had called Fuentes out on her show some weeks ago for accusing her of misrepresentation, where she vehemently denied with receipts. And in another episode, she defended Fuentes, or at least gave a balanced reaction to the mini Twitter feud between Fuentes, Jordan Peterson, and Peterson's daughter, Michaela, because this is it. This entire economy is based on them arguing and bitching and like going backwards and forwards and going on each other's shows and stuff like that to give the impression that basically there's more people interested in them than they actually are. So basically, during this interview, she's usually like a fairly courteous interview, but she just basically just interrupted and like went on personal gripes, and they got really sort of like annoyed with well, define that word and define this, and she tried to belittle him and accused him of being triggered, basically. And then basically what happened was she finished the interview by just in the middle of like a sentence essentially saying, right, I've got to stop because the baby's hungry. And then she just walked off and says off camera, all right, bring him to me. And, the camera sort of focuses on Nick, and he's just sat there, goes like, oh, all right, okay. She didn't say goodbye. She didn't even end the interview. Now, there may be a reason for this, because what happens is they had a fundamental disagreement, something that they weren't really able to get past, and that fundamental disagreement was that Nick doesn't believe that there should be any mixed race marriages, and obviously she is of a mixed race. And she also basically sort of accused him of being selfish because he hasn't got a family. And he says that she kept sort of needling Nick. And why haven't you got, why haven't you settled down? Why haven't you found a nice girl, Nick? Is there any reason that you've not found a girl? And basically saying that you need to be populating the world with white people. And Nick responded by saying, I don't appreciate the lecture. You don't know me. I don't think you're in a position to give me advice, especially as a woman. Candace then accused him of getting super triggered. Like she's clearly like pissed off that he's saying, look, I'm not listening to you. You're a woman. I'm not listening, and a woman of color as well. And so Nick basically implies that the only reason that she's married is because she's a grasping gold digger. And he says, I could go and start a family and drag them into a world of mine, which is pretty chaotic. This is really kind of a lifestyle. If I'm banned on everything and I can't make a living, I'm banned from banking, I'm banned from credit card processing, I'm getting doxed, people are showing up at my house trying to kill me, things like that. And what's more, let's also get, I also don't appreciate the lecture. You don't know me, you don't know. So you're married. And I know that you're older than me. but you don't know me. You don't know my life. You don't know my situation. I don't think you're in a position to give me advice, especially as a woman. Honestly, I don't think you know this is something in the right wing. We say we're anti-feminists, and then women go around telling men what to do who are not their husbands. And, you know, I really don't buy into that ideologically, but that's besides the point. My life has been tumultuous from the beginning. From the time I turned 18, people were coming from my neck and trying to get me, and I was kicked out of college. And then, you know, once you're branded as an anti-Semite before it became cool or popular, you can't get a job, you can't make a living, you get panned from PayPal and all this stuff. Do you know, that's difficult. What do? I go out on Tinder. I go to a bar and say, "Hi, I'm a neo-Nazi, Nick Fuentes, that the ADL is writing articles about every day. I'm going to start a dating profile on Tinder." People are going to screenshot that, mess with me in all kinds of ways. It's been a very difficult predicament, actually, for me, because I took on basically a huge sacrifice at the beginning. And I don't know that you really appreciate that enough. I think you're somebody who, you know, you had a career in politics for as long as I was fighting a battle. You were at the Daily Wire with a contract. You're at Turning Point. You're making good money. You're doing book deals. You're part of this thing that I'm criticizing and paying a very heavy price for at a time when no one's saying those things, when it's unpopular. And not to say that I'm that we've lived different lives. And, you know, it's easy. I think for you to say you had a husband, have your kids, that you've got your ducks in a row, made quite a bit of money, and then you discovered the truth, and then you went out on a limb. And it's not to say that you didn't make sacrifices and it wasn't a risk and it paid off, but you're doing great now, and I congratulate you. But with me, there was no calculation. I mean, I almost want to say, I was 17. What's your excuse? And so he's basically there, just accused her of calculating in her life choices, shall we say. And that was the reason that basically they fell out. She's essentially needling him for not having a kid. And there was a slight undercurrent of her suggesting that he might potentially not be interested in women. And then he needles her with that basically absolutely right, that she's calculated everything in her life. But what's the wonderful thing to take out there is that Nick Fuentes is clearly deeply, deeply unhappy. Like, he's very conscious that he can't connect with people because people will fuck with him. He can't send stuff to people, like a Twitter, a text message or something, trying to hook up with anybody. He's made this reality where he's isolated. He's completely isolated himself. And he talks about how hard that was and how, you know, he had a rough time of it and was sort of forced into this position. And you just think, good.
It's one of those things where, like, you're popular but lonely.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know,
like, it's
like if he didn't have all those reprehensible views and wasn't such a terrible person, like, he's so right in many of the things that he's saying about these people.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, absolutely. He's cutting, and he gets it. He gets it. Like, but this is the point. They're all so close to each other that they can all see the flaws in one another, and they're not shy to point it out. It's hilarious, but they're all just complete hypocrites.
He does remind me a bit of, like, Ike in that sense of, like, being
the contrarian.
Yeah,
even within the contrarians, like, you know, I don't need anybody. I want this for myself, and like,
but also sticking to their core narrative and not bending on it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's a Nazi, and you're not gonna move him on that.
yeah.
Or are you?
It's just fascinating.
I mean, you know, that'd be dreadful if, like, you know, he abandoned those types of principles for money or something like that. Maybe that'll come up later. Who knows? We can see. But basically, so Candace Owens, we need to have a little bit of a look into who Candace Owens is. And can you believe that if you just take even the most cursory look at her background, it is, as Fun Size Fascist has said, it seems to be somewhat calculating. She first sort of came to prominence. She's from New York, but she grew up in Connecticut. And she first came to prominence in 2007. And this is when she was 17. She was only 17 at the time. Candace Owens, who doesn't believe in sort of Black Lives Matter, has made a prominent point of saying that racism isn't a thing in America and stuff like that. Doesn't believe in victim culture, obviously. Like these are all things that you could say about Candace. She sued the Stanford Board of Education in federal court, alleging that the city did not protect her rights, and basically won $37,500. Now, in all fairness to her, she was receiving racist death threats. So this woman who claims that racism doesn't exist actually sued the school that she went to because they didn't protect her from racism. And it was horrible. Basically, what happened was a group of white male classmates, which included the son of the mayor, who actually went on to be a Democratic governor, a chap called Daniel Malloy. They left two messages which were about 2 minutes long, threatening her, calling her dirty, threatening to burn her house down and tar and feather her. And so this is grim. But for somebody that now has the opinion that racism isn't really a big deal and you really shouldn't like moan about these things because they don't exist, she's experienced it herself and actually had a positive result from calling that shit out. So she's a dreadful hypocrite. In 2015, she was the CEO of a marketing agency called Degree 180. And basically, she just set herself up as a consultant. And she did a blog that was written by her and a couple of different people, but mostly her. Can you guess what one of the prominent blogs that she wrote was all about?
So what, this is before she's a right-winger, or?
This is 2015. Yeah. It was
2015. It's got to be Black Lives Matter.
No. She was writing about how batshit crazy the Republican Party were, especially the Tea Party elements of the Republican Party. Like, she wrote in one of these blogs, the good news is that they will eventually die off peacefully in their sleep, we hope, and then we can get right on with the obvious social change that needs to happen immediately. And in 2016, she wrote an entire article mocking the small size of Donald Trump's penis. Yeah. She then, also that year in 2016, she set up a website which was called socialautopsy.com. She had an idea. It's not a brilliant idea. In fact, it's a very stupid idea. But some have said that potentially her heart was in the right place. You see, Candace Owens, the acid tongues, no, doesn't take any shit, she doesn't care, fuck your feelings, all of this sort of stuff. She decided to set up a website to expose people bullying people on the internet. She was actively trying to stop cyberbullying. Hurty words, as they would now call that. That was what she was doing. But she did have a very stupid idea of what was the best way to tackle this particular problem. She thought that the best way to tackle cyberbullies was to dox them. So if people don't know what doxing is, it basically means revealing where these people live to encourage sort of personal harassment, or not necessarily where they live, but usually where they live. Some just basically ways for people to contact you so that they can pester you. And this led to her interacting with somebody that if somebody had said, who Candace Owens used to be vaguely involved with, and said this person, I would be astonished. You won't guess this, right? If some people might not even know who she is, but off the back of this anti-harassment site that she'd set up, she was contacted by Zoe Quinn.
Oh, okay, yeah. Gamer.
Now, exactly. Now, if people don't know who Zoe Quinn is it was the target of a thing called Gamergate. Essentially, what happened was she'd split up with her boyfriend, and then her boyfriend decided to create this idea that she'd slept with certain game reviewers in order to get a positive review of her game. The principal problem with this theory was that this person never reviewed her game that she'd designed. So the theory just fell completely flat. But what happened was a sustained campaign of harassment against her and numerous other women within the computer gaming industry, suggesting that it wasn't just harassing women and impotent men trying to make themselves feel scary and dangerous. Oh no! It was about integrity within the online gaming reviewing community. That was what it was about. And interestingly, Steve Bannon and Milo Yiannopoulos were also very involved in Gamergate. So this is where they basically got their start not Bannon, but this is certainly where he got involved in certain things that would become prominent in his life, follow from that. So Quinn basically tried to warn Candace that, like, mate, I don't know whether you understand the fucking internet, but this is not a thing that you should do. And you shouldn't get involved. She was starting to get involved with the sort of Gamergate people, and they said, "Look, it's not going to end well." And lo and behold, Candace became target number one for huge amounts of people. She got completely just death threats again, like DDoS attacks, anything that you can do. All this hate mail, loads of people writing shit about her all over the internet. And what Candace did was she turned on Zoe Quinn. Now, there's debates as to why this happened. I've seen some people basically saying that she just misunderstood, that she thought that Zoe Quinn, her warning was like a threat. And she put two and two together and said, oh, it's obviously her that's behind this coordinated attack. Now, there's other people that basically said that she did this in order to ingratiate herself with the people that were attacking her. Like, obviously, you couldn't say, but what then happened was that the Gamergate trolls decided that actually Candace Owens would be a better ally than an enemy, and basically decided that everyone decided to start supporting her and claiming that they'd red pilled her. And this is where she became a conservative, saying in 2017, I became a conservative overnight when I realized that liberals were actually the racists. Liberals were actually the trolls. Social autopsy is why I'm conservative. And that's bullshit. That's absolute bullshit. It wasn't liberals that were attacking you and being racist towards you. It was conservatives that you then decided to attach yourself to. Like, it's almost like trauma bonding or like, people making excuses for a domestic abuser. It's crazy. Like, I hope it's that. I do hope it's that it's some sort of mental imbalance, because if it's not that, it's purely commercial, and that makes her the worst type of person on the planet. Anyway, also in 2017, she started knocking about with Charlie Kirk, and she got a job with Turning Point USA. And I don't want anybody to think that Turning Point USA is one of those organizations that has clumsy racist type names for certain things because it's out of touch and doesn't understand terms and stuff like that. But they did hire Owens as the organization's director of urban engagement. Jesus Christ. Yes. So she also was trotted out after the Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, which is where you must remember Nick Fuentes first burst onto the scene. And obviously this was a white nationalist march. They were shouting blood and honor, Jews will not replace us and stuff like that. But it's all right, because Candace Owens said that any concern over rising white nationalism was stupid. So George Farmer, who is her husband, he proposed a marriage to Candace Owens via a FaceTime call on the 29th of December 2018, which was only 18 days after he'd met her for the first time when she was on holiday in London. Right? So she would have been home for Christmas. So that leaves a very, very short amount of time for them to have physically interacted with one another before they got married. Who is George Farmer? George Farmer is the chairman of Turning Point UK. He's the former CEO of Parler, which was the communication thing like Twitter that was also Rebecca Mercer was involved with. And he's also the CEO of Parliament Technologies. He went to Oxford, where he earned a degree. This is fascinating. If the rumours about George Farmer are true, do you know what his degree was in?
Arts.
Theology.
Oh.
Melado was discussing religion and religious doctrines and maybe trying to figure out what was... I mean, you see, we're speculating here, we're spitballing and stuff like that. But if the rumours are true, and you were writing this as like a sitcom, as a drama, the man that potentially was struggling with his sexuality, being interested in theology and the religious arguments for and against this state of being that he finds himself in, well, that would be salacious, wouldn't it? He's also really close friends with Andrew Tate, George Farmer. They were friends before Andrew Tate was famous. And this is why Candace Owens has Andrew Tate and his brother on and constantly defends them and lies about their ongoing court cases. Yeah, isn't it? So in 2018, she promoted Blexit. Can you remember what Blexit was?
No.
It was the black exit from the Democrats, where she and Kanye West were encouraging black people to, and I quote, get off the plantation. Because it's really Democrats that are racist. It's not right-wingers. It's not conservatives. It's somehow the people on the left wing that are racist. And, you know, this idea that they're just being nice to you is for nefarious ends, apparently. Didn't make sense then, doesn't make sense now. So anyway, she was at Turning Point UK's launch in December 2018. And she decided that, you know, people asked her some questions, and she decided to make some comments about a certain historical figure that, in retrospect, some people have said, I wouldn't have spoken about him at the launch of Turning Point UK because it has connotations and connections. Do you know which... This is quite famous. Do you know which historical figure she decided to... Some would say champion, and some would say, you know, sugarcoat. She would say otherwise. Not quite. No, that'd be awkward, wouldn't it? If she spoke in positive terms about someone as nefarious as Bill Cosby, that'd be awful, wouldn't it? No, it was Hitler.
I knew it was.
She said, she basically, right. She was asked for a long-term prognosis about globalism and nationalism by an audience member. And she said, I don't have any problems with it at all, the word nationalism. I think that the definition gets poisoned by elitists that actually want globalism. Globalism is what I don't want. Whenever we say nationalism, the first people think about, at least in America, is Hitler, you know. Hitler was a national socialist. But if Hitler just wanted to make Germany great and have things run well, okay, fine. The problem is that he had dreams outside of Germany. He wanted to globalize. He wanted everybody to be German, everybody to be speaking German, everybody to look a different way. That's not, to me, that's not nationalism. This, fuck my life. Like, I know my brain sometimes goes off on tangents and stuff like that, but when you were like trying to say positive things about nationalism, like, what the fucking hell were you thinking, going, this is probably a good time to bring up Hitler? Do you know what I mean? It's like, and also, she's all over the fucking place. Nationalism is a definition that gets poisoned by elitists that actually want globalism. What does that even mean? I suppose what she's saying is that it's demonized by people who actually want sort of globalism, and by globalism she means a sort of cooperative sort of state of being, as opposed to isolation and isolated nations. And then the positive idea that she's just to bolster her fucking idea is, you know, like Nazi Germany. like that until it went a bit too wrong, until it went wrong and started expanding outside of its borders, and then it changed to globalism. Like, what a fucking moron this woman is! Like, absolutely stupid. She tried to clarify in a tweet. She said, Hitler was a homicidal psychopathic maniac that killed his own people, and Hitler was not a nationalist. He murdered his own people. A nationalist would not kill their own people. She said that the point of her comments was to say that there is no excuse or defense ever for everything that Hitler did, which is bullshit, because she didn't. She extolled him as an example of nationalism before he went mental and tried to take over the planet. Yeah. Anyway. In May 2019, she started a show of her own, The Candace Owens Show, on PragerU. PragerU is owned by the Wilkes brothers, who are fracking and oil magnates, who also finance the Daily Wire and Ben Shapiro in a big way. I
think this is where I started to see Candace Owens on Prager University videos.
Did you used to watch PragerU? Did you? Like, I'd seen her on the Blexit thing, and
not because I liked it, but because it was like ridiculous.
Ah, fair enough. Didn't she call herself Black Pill or Black Pilled or something at one point as well? I'm sure she called herself that, and that's where I first saw her. Like, but anyway,
it's
so
one of those things again, kind of like the New Culture Forum, where I started watching these right-wing figures who were like, they were using our shit, man.
Yeah.
And I was like, who are these people? Why are they talking about these things that we used to believe in? Why are they pushing that? And that's where I started to come across these figures.
Well, I'd love to criticize, but that's exactly how I find out about all the shit that we're talking about right now. By watching batshit shit, because it's like, this is incredible. What the fuck is going on here? Basically. So for some reason in April 29, she gave testimony before the US House Judiciary Committee on the rise of hate crimes and white supremacists in the United States. And she made the claim that the Southern strategy employed by the Republican Party to increase political support among white voters in the South by appealing to racism was a myth that never happened. So basically what happened was the Southern strategy was the Republican Party. It's essentially the same as that. They used racist tactics. They said, if you vote for Democrats, the likelihood is that you will see more black people. And it was not dissimilar to the Conservatives. If you want an N-word for a neighbor, vote Liberal or Labour.
I just thought the exact same thing.
Yeah, it's a thing that they do. Like they put it out there, and then these people would say, "Well, of course I voted Democrat," but because it's appealed to their racism, they go and vote Conservative, and then go, nightmare. But she was basically shot down by several well-versed historians on the subject, who said that the existence of the Southern strategy was a well-documented and dated back to the civil rights era. Historian Kevin Kruse, who writes critically about modern conservatism, called Owens' statements utter nonsense. Also later in that year, for no apparent reason, Owens said that African Americans had it better in the first 100 years after the abolition of slavery in the United States than they have ever since in America, and that socialism was at fault. And there's several things wrong with that. It's like, you don't actually have any fucking socialism. And also, that's bollocks. Absolute fucking bollocks. But again, this is why it was important to include that thing at the beginning about her, basically, so where she was like, she was a victim of racism. Pretending that all this shit never happened, is outrageous. She then went on to start doing the Daily Wire. She left PragerU and went on to the Daily Wire, which is essentially owned by the same people anyway. And she started to up the ante, claiming that George Soros was behind all the protests of the murder of George Floyd. Now, George Floyd was the man that was murdered by a police officer by kneeling on his throat for nearly 9 minutes. And obviously this was where the sort of, was it the origin, or was it where they just sort of rose to prominence? Black Lives Matter became prominent off the back of this, and obviously she was completely opposed to this. And then there was all the rumors that basically that was all funded by Soros and it was to riot and cause a civil war and all that shit.
Yeah, it's probably when it became prominent in like mainstream media, but they had been around for a little while before that. I think sometime around 2015, 2016.
That makes sense. Yeah, fair enough. But she basically she claimed that the trial of the police officer Derek Chauvin was mob justice and not a fair trial, and she contended that nobody could claim that it was a fair trial.
Correction, they were founded in 2013.
Ah, fabulous. Very fair play. So in March 2021, she decides that she wants to start a beef, but not just any old beef, a beef with a rapper. Do you know which rapper she decided to have a go at?
Sprack.
No, it wasn't the Smack. That would have been interesting. But it was Cardi B. So
oh yeah, I remember this.
She basically got all up in her shit about the performance of WAP. And that's interesting because Ben Shapiro was also very, very annoyed by WAP. So she's having a go at Cardi B and basically calling her a disgusting whore and all this sort of stuff. So Cardi B tweeted something out. She tweeted out a screenshot of a tweet supposedly sent by Candace Owens. Did you see this tweet? Can you remember what it said?
No.
The tweet supposedly by Candace Owens, which was screenshotted by rapper Cardi B, said, "Yes, my husband did cheat on me with my brother, and he said no when I asked to join them." Now, Candace Owens pushed back and said that this was photoshopped, and Cardi B basically posted screenshots from several blogs that had reported on this tweeted and deleted message. Now, it transpires that this wasn't a real tweet. It wasn't a real tweet, but people believed it because, well, who can say why people believed it? But there's even funnier story. Do you know who created this meme? It wasn't Cardi B. You'll never guess. It was
DJ Vlad.
No, it wasn't DJ Vlad, although that would have been nice. It was fans of the One Direction singer Harry Styles. You see, what happened was Candace Owens.
What?
Yeah, I know. It's great, isn't it? Candace Owens had criticised Harry Styles because he'd appeared on the cover of Vogue wearing a dress.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So
this.
Yeah. And so she'd basically said that this was not masculine and that it was a detriment to society. And she'd started arguing with fans of Harry Styles and One Direction online. And so, so they decided to get together. Someone made this false tweet about her husband having an affair with her brother, and they posted it everywhere on the internet. Fans of One Direction.
Oh, wow.
Isn't that marvelous? Isn't that marvelous? But one of the reasons that sort of stuck or was believed was because of tweets that had come out prior to this from Raheem Kassam. Do you know who Raheem Kassam is?
No.
He worked for Breitbart. His title is journalist, but that's very charitable. He worked for Breitbart, and he tweeted out a series of things. The more I know about this world, I know more about this world than I care to. Mercer tried to get me to tell Bannon to shut up about populist nationalism. I was the guy who hired Milo at Breitbart. George Farmer, has sexually assaulted me. Candace blocked me for calling her sham marriage out. I know this from all angles. This was in November of 2022. He also tweeted out in a discussion about Candace, Well, when your husband is a homosexual, that makes for a difficult marriage. But if you support that kind of thing, I'm happy to lose you. And someone responded, why would Candace marry someone who is pretending? That doesn't seem like her. However, I trust you more than her after she bashed President Trump and stabbed him in the back. And Raheem Kassam responds, yes, I wonder why the perennial grifter Candace Owens would want to marry into the family of a wealthy British lord. This is very difficult to figure out. And then a final tweet by him was, well, me too. Years ago, when her husband tried to make out with me, or when she lied about inventing the Brexit thing, or when she blocked me for telling people how she behaved on set at Fox. And so that's Raheem Kassam on a couple of occasions saying that her marriage to George Farmer is a sham and that George Farmer tried it on with him, which he considers sexual assault. What a twisted web these people weave. I just want to say, we're not saying anything. This is all in the public domain. We're not speculating. We're not trying to be salacious. And, we don't care if people are gay. Like, more power to you. What we care about is hypocrites and the projection that comes out of the more extreme figures of the right-wing and far right-wing media.
Just want to say one more thing as well about Black Lives Matter being started in 2013. It was in response to George Zimmerman's acquittal of shooting Trayvon Martin.
Wow, was it off the back of that? I mean, fair play. That makes sense.
That's what it was.
That makes complete sense. But I did not know that. I did not realize it had gone as far back as that. Yeah. So anyway, speaking of Black Lives Matter, in October 2022, Candace decided that a very good idea was to appear at the Paris fashion show for SZN9, wearing a T-shirt saying "White Lives Matter," standing next to Kanye West, who was wearing a similar T-shirt. It's just tragic. In January 2024, she, in a post on Twitter, she accused transgender people of mass drugging children and claimed that the LGBTQ movement brought with it a sexual plague on our society. Interesting if the rumors are true. Oh, and she's also basically she's really critical of Israel, okay, but not in any sensible way. She ties it in with
she just doesn't like it because it's populated with Jews.
With Jews, yeah, that's her problem. Not Israel's foreign policy. It's all the fucking Jews that are there. That's why she doesn't like it, basically. Brilliant. But in October 2023, she condemned an Israeli strike on a church in Gaza that resulted in the deaths of Christians. But again, I've been disgusted by the propagandists pretending a Christian church was not bombed. Christians were killed. No Christian should stay silent. If you think it's anti-Semitism to notice innocent Christians were killed in an IDF bombing, then you need to log off. No, it's not. It's not anti-Semitism for that. Other things that she said are deeply anti-Semitic. And it is grim that basically she doesn't give a fuck about things until she's got that angle that she can sell to her audience, that it's Christians being killed. That was not the first atrocity that had been carried out in Gaza. I'm telling you that, it just wasn't. But she wasn't interested in anything before. As you say, she was critical of Jews. She was not critical of Israel, although she did go on to say that no government anywhere has a right to commit a genocide ever. And this basically led to her falling out with Ben Shapiro, who's the co-founder of the Daily Wire, which is where she worked. So in March 2024, she left. And then she was accused of anti-Semitism and also accused of downplaying the prevalence of anti-Semitism. And famously, she said people who are now screaming anti-Semitism is everywhere are actually just racial supremacists, which is one of those the real racists are the anti-racists type shit. It's just bullshit, basically. But here's an interesting thing. At that time, she also criticized Jordan Peterson. She was cross with him because he'd called Nick Fuentes or Nicholas Funtimes a psychopathic rat after Fuentes had tweeted that Jews control the Biden administration. And And Owens even supported him by saying that Fuentes could actually be correct based on the number of Jewish officials in the Biden administration, and saying that it seems a weird tweet for Peterson to be so disturbed about this. Now, she also referred to Nicholas Fuentes as having a very long background of focusing his attention on Israel and Zionism, and that's what he's reacting to. And Fuentes has also previously praised Owens, saying that she was waging, and I quote, a full-fledged war against the Jews. So they were friends, or at least when they felt it was mutually beneficial, they'd, fluff each other off, essentially. Now, in August 17 of this year, Owens decided that she'd go down a different route, and she posted a roughly 1 minute video in which she decided that she discovered who was behind the assassination of John F. Kennedy. Can you guess who she decided was behind the assassination of John F. Kennedy?
Bill Cosby.
It was Bill Cosby, yes. No, she decided that it was Israel. Israel had decided to kill JFK.
God damn it, I was going to go that
way. And she warned that anybody that criticizes Israel or the Jews is in danger of being killed. She says, do you think it's normal that basically every person who speaks out about Israel has to basically say a statement that, I don't want to get killed? She ranted in the video, which circulated widely on X. Later, she added that Israel has taken over the USA. And days later, she did an interview with Tristan Tate, and who's the brother of Andrew Tate, the pimp and sex trafficker. And in it, she started going on about the conspiracy theory that Joseph Stalin was Jewish. And she also said that Sigmund Freud and all the Stalinists were part of this Jewish cabal. And she went on to state that Sigmund Freud studied the Kabbalah and also promoted pedophilia through psychoanalysis. The irony of saying that when she's having a chat with Tristan Tate, who is alleged to have had anal sex with a 15-year-old girl that he trafficked, it is not lost on me. Also, I've studied a bit of psychoanalysis. I don't recall the bit where he promoted pedophilia. I just don't. Maybe it was more towards the end of the book, but I just didn't find that. She also equated Jews with Marxist, and she says that the Jews want to rewrite history. She implied that these Marxists were Jews, and that they assassinated the Tsar in Russia in the 1880s under the guise of pogroms. And she said that the media has also tried to convince people that Stalin and Lenin were anti-Semitic, and then agreed with Tate that the two Russian leaders were actually part of a Jewish cabal. Now, Stalin and Lenin were hugely anti-Semitic. That's just a fact. And Marx wasn't Jewish. So, these are old, debunked conspiracy theories. She also claimed that Judaism was, and I quote, a pedophile-centric religion that believes in demons and child sacrifice, and that she is waking people up to the fact that pedophiles are in power, which is just crazy. But she had a big fan off the back of all this, which was Nick Fuentes. Or Nicholas Fuentes. He said, Candace Owens has been on a tear recently. She's in a full-fledged war against the Jews, and specifically some of these Zionist rabbis, and I've been watching her evolution. It's been remarkable to witness. In July 2024, Owens released an episode of the Candace Owens show on YouTube, and I don't want to suggest that she's trying to be sort of outrageous to gain attention or to cause sort of outrage in some sort of edgy way that a teenager would do. But this particular video was titled, and it's like, sorry, the 90s called and wanted your sort of phrasing back. It was called Literally Hitler. Why can't we talk about him? It's yes, if only someone would talk about Hitler, because we know so little about the man. What the fuck? What are you fucking on about? But anyway, she she criticized mainstream narratives regarding Nazi Germany, saying that what most people think they know about Nazi Germany is comparable to Soviet tactics of indoctrination. She also denied that any medical experiments were carried out by Joseph Mengele on concentration camp inmates, claiming that experiments, the idea that these experiments occurred was bizarre propaganda. The idea that you just cut up a human and then sew them back together. Why would you even do that? Even if you're the most evil person in the world, that's a tremendous waste of time and supplies. Now, in the interest of fairness, there is a degree of accuracy to that. Not that no experiments were done, but this idea that he sewed people together or sewed twins together. We've all heard the Angel of Death by Slayer. So together, joining heads, people don't die in their wide awake nightmare. I can't remember it. But the gist of it is he didn't actually do that. He did some fucked up shit. But some of the things that he said, like trying to reverse a girl's urine tract through her lower intestine, stuff like that, that didn't happen. I think there was an idea that he tried to swap heads, or he was trying to alter people's eyes to make them blue so that they would be more airy, and that's not strictly true. But they did do lots of fucked up stuff, and it wasn't a very pleasant time. And he just would it was bizarre because the kids that he was experimenting on, he actually treated them with a degree of sort of pleasantness for a bit, and then on the whim, or when they became useless to him, he'd inject them in the heart with something like petrol. And so he murdered. Yeah, it was a disgrace. Absolutely. I don't think for a second that this is where we like rehabilitate the image of Joseph Mengele. That's not happening. Just the sewing people together bits. Anyway, she also referred to the Holocaust as an ethnic cleansing that almost took place, whilst actually saying that after the war, the Allies actually did an ethnic cleansing on the Germans. And what she's doing there is referring to sort of like concentration camps where sort of German and Japanese people were interned in after the war, which was a grim thing, obviously. But they didn't ethnically cleanse Germans. It was just not a thing. Not in the way that she's described. She's also doing the fucking David Icke thing of saying that Ashkenazi Jews trace their origins to Khazars and that they aren't related to biblical Jews, and so therefore any anti-Semitism isn't anti-Semitism because Semitic actually refers to Arabic people, and so if you're calling Jews shit, that's not anti-Semitism. And it's like, are you really nitpicking? Shut up. You're going to nitpick about something like that. Fine. All right. Call it bigotry or racism or whatever you want to call it then. Or like that doesn't excuse the behavior, like because you've misdescribed it or because you think someone's misdescribed it. She says that they were forced to convert to Judaism by Persians and Russians in the 8th century, but they did not meaningfully convert, and they carried on their corruption and sexual deviancy. And she suggested that their religious teachings tell them to infiltrate everywhere, and the elites are disgusting, despicable people. And she implied that the war in Ukraine is actually linked to Jews, essentially, the Khazars' desire to seek revenge on Russia and Iran. And then she went on to blame all the instances of sexual abuse in the Catholic Church on secret Khazarian Jews that disguise themselves as Catholics and then buggered a load of children in order to give the Catholic Church a poor reputation, which is big if true. She then went on to say that Leo Frank, who's the Jewish businessman who was wrongly convicted of the murder of a child, Mary Fagan, who was then lynched after he was found to be innocent of the crime. It said that the murder of Mary Fagan was part of a ritual murder on Passover in which blood was extracted from children. And she goes on to say that there is a Frankish cult masquerading behind Jews that engages in paedophilia, incest, and sacramental rites. And there are tens of thousands of paedophiles who hide from justice in Israel. Most people won't spot that, but if you're nerdy about conspiracies like we are, she's talking about Sabbatian Frankists She's talking about these secret Jews who aren't really Jews, that pretend to be Jews and then infiltrate into other things while still being Jewish in order to control the world, which is basically like anti-Semitism with layers of, it can't be anti-Semitism because they're not really Jews, that David Icke has popularized, which he actually nicked from a book that came out in the 80s by a man called Rabbi Antelman, who I don't think was a real rabbi by any stretch of the imagination. And that is the idea of the Sabbatian Frankists as this hidden group. She's called it a Frankish cult because she thinks it's named after Leo Frank. Leo Frank was the Jewish gentleman that was wrongly convicted of a murder and then, when found innocent, was lynched. And his murder led to the foundation of the Anti-Defamation League.
So you're telling me she didn't do her research?
Not even fucking close. She's heard two certain things and she's mashed them together in her brain and she's got it totally wrong.
It's the cult of Frank Sinatra.
Absolutely. Now, this led to a fallout with her father-in-law, Lord Farmer, the father of George Farmer, who has been accused by several people of being secretly gay. Repudiated her for these repeated anti-Semitic remarks. And also off the back of this, she was disinvited from Trump campaign fundraisers following sort of criticism from Jewish lobbyists. So she decided to go a different route. Have you seen what Candace's most recent bullshit's about?
Yes, I have. Are we talking Macron?
Yes. The Brigitte Macron, the wife of French President Emmanuel Macron, is secretly a transgender man, or is a man in disguise. It's not entirely clear whether she says that she's transitioned or whether she's pretending or what. She said, "After looking into this, I would stake my entire professional reputation." That doesn't count for much. Anyway, after looking into this, I would stake my entire professional reputation on the fact that Brigitte Macron is in fact a man. Any journalist or publication that is trying to dismiss this plausibility is immediately identifiable as establishment. The implications here are terrifying. And in 2025, she released this multi-part video miniseries titled Becoming Brigitte, which promoted the conspiracy theory. She also promoted the book by investigative journalist Xavier Prossard, Don Vier Brigitte, Becoming Brigitte, which apparently sold rather well on Amazon. Now, the Macrons actually filed a suit against her, and the 22-count court complaint is basically seeking punitive damages against her and all her customers. All her companies, and she's fucked. We might actually do a deep dive into this, but I'm going to spill the tea on this one now because I've read that investigation and her entire and the lawsuit, and her entire thing is based on a lie. It's a twofold lie. One, she claims that there's never been any pictures of Brigitte Macron's brother. And that's just not true. There's lots and lots of pictures of him as an adult. She claims that she died, and he took over her place by pretending to be a woman before then pedophilically seducing Emmanuel Macron is her theory. And what she said was that nobody's ever been able to provide evidence. And if anyone has provides evidence to the contrary, and this would include pictures of Brigitte Macron as a woman, pictures of her, as a child, pictures of her pregnant, pictures of her daughter, and pictures of her brother as an adult, also maybe her birth certificate or other documentation like that. And so do you know what the Macrons did?
Sent her a Razzle stack.
Not entirely, but they did send her all the evidence that she asked for. They didn't just send it to her once. They sent it to her on numerous occasions. Right? But it's even more embarrassing than that. Right? Okay. So when she keeps saying that there's no evidence to this, like the evidence, you can go and read the lawsuit. In the lawsuit, they show the evidence that the Macrons had sent to her, proving her theory wrong. But it's even more embarrassing than that. She admitted that she first got the idea for this theory. It's not even her own theory. She got the idea from a Daily Mail article, okay, which is not a good place to start. But do you know what this article was about?
That this conspiracy theory was bullshit.
Exactly. It was debunking the book.
Amazing.
And that's where she first got the idea. And either she doesn't care, or she didn't check, or she just thought that, you know, it was going to be a good idea for her to do this because, yeah.
It's just one of those things where they don't read the article. It's the headline.
But they know that the following audience doesn't really care. They just want the salacious stuff and that, like, and so she keeps doubling down and doubling down. I think she's going to come an absolute cropper with this one. I really do think that she's messed herself up in a big way. So basically, that's kind of, so she's fallen out with Nick about this, and Nick's tweeting out in response to her, "Bitch, shut up and go make me a sandwich." So Candace responds by saying, "I'm literally shaking right now. How will I ever survive being told to go make a sandwich? You're really setting up an example for real men everywhere. I'm trying my best to calm down and collect myself, but I'm a woman, so give me time." And Nicholas Funtimes responds, "Hey, take all the time you need. Turkey, provolone, lettuce and tomato, please. Easy on the mayo. Thanks, hun. I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. Everyone can see that you're totally not a raging bitch." And he goes on to say, "The thing is, I'm just really not myself when I'm hungry. That's why I really need a sandwich." So anyway, she's fucked it basically, because like when it comes to this sort of stuff, Nick is better at it than her. Like, I mean, they're all crap and they're all despicable liars, they're all hypocrites, but like, you know, we're here for the bitch fight. And she says, "I'm honestly in awe at how much Nick Fuentes has publicly lied about me since he left my house. But rather than cry about it, as he most definitely would, I have instead invited him back for an actual debate where he can bring his alleged receipts. To avoid this inevitable victim act, I've asked Dan Balzerian to moderate the discussion." So Nick can't put on his favourite "I was attacked because I'm just so real and they're going to kill me. Too many theatre boys in politics. This will be fun because I think it will reveal to the public what we should not fear discussion if we're telling the truth." Now, Dan Balzerian was one of these influencers who pretended to be like a multi-millionaire and had the lifestyle. He's steadied up to fuck, and he prays all these prosers to hang around him, which make it look like he's successful for the women and with the women. And it basically came to light that he doesn't actually have any money. He was renting all these places, and actually someone else was bankrolling him. And I suppose the idea was to make money off his influencing, but he himself was not anything close to the lifestyle that he was projecting. And obviously, when that failed, he did the obvious thing that people do on Twitter nowadays. He decided to start going against the Jews, figuring out that the Jews were mainly the big problem. And one of his big sort of things was he said that the Jews, as a collective, perpetrated the Holodomor in the Soviet in Ukraine, assassinated John F. Kennedy, also assassinated Muammar Gaddafi, and created, and I quote, "all this transgender nonsense." Also, obviously, they did September 11th. Needless to say, that's all bollocks. He's also gone on the record to say that Nazi Germany flourished when Hitler removed Jews from the banking system, and that Spain's golden age began because it expelled the Jews at the end of 1492. He also has been interviewed by Piers Morgan, this stupid bastard, and he's argued that Judaism promotes supremacy and rape and steals from other people as long as they're not Jewish, and that most of the problems today are caused by Jewish supremacy. He's also said that anti-Semitism, he's done the whole fucking anti-Semitism is a misnomer because the Palestinian people are the real Semites, but Eastern people are Ashkenazi Jews, blah, blah, blah. They don't have Hebrew DNA. So, you know, he's got pretty much the entire bingo card of twatty anti-Semitism, including Holocaust denialism. He's gone on record to say that he would bet his entire net worth that it was less than 6 million, and followed up by saying that Jews killed more Christians than Jews were killed, and that Jews essentially invented genocide, which I'm pretty sure is completely factually inaccurate. But anyway, she goes on basically kind of saying, talking about how she's but she's trying to arrange this with either Dan or Charlie Kirk and whatever. Nick can do it. Basically, she says he's a pathological liar who created the mythology of the most cancelled man alive. If you're a straight man who fell for this act, you're officially gay now. Not another word from you little frog boys ever again. Good night. And it's like, this is going to be a running theme. Like, all of them accusing each other of being secretly gay, like, and as if to sort of like take that to the next level. The other person that they decide to start stepping into this is Milo Yiannopoulos. Milo Yiannopoulos, who famously isn't gay anymore because of gay conversion therapy, decided to start sticking up for Candace Owens. Candace Owens, who previously he was not friends with and was publicly outing her husband as being a secret homosexual, a closeted homosexual, and Candace of being her beard, and her marriage of being a sham. They're friends again now, apparently, and so Milo decided to basically join in the fray and start having a go at Nick. And she started to repeat his rhetoric about, and it was essentially about Nicholas Fuentes on January the 6th. Is Nicholas Fuentes a Fed? Also, is Nicholas Fuentes secretly gay? And Candace decided that she would essentially finish this whole thing off by saying, people are like, why are you arguing? You're all on the same side, MAGA, yada, 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 all this, fight the Jews, etc., etc., etc. And Candace Owens decided to tweet out, the litmus test is paedophilia, guys. Anybody who is in any way defending or covering for elite paedophiles is the enemy. Don't care about your race, religion, or ethnicity. If you are with paedophiles, you're against me. And so I responded, your mate Milo, he resigned from Breitbart due to defending paedophilia. Your friends, the Tate, are charged with anal sex of a 15-year-old girl that they trafficked. You also interviewed Jim Jordan, who covered up abuse of school children. And how's about that fucking Catholic church that you like so much? And then in the next episode, we're going to see what happens when Milo sticks his fucking oar in.
Did you get a response?
No, of course I didn't. Absolutely not. No. What's he going to do? Yeah, good points, Neil, actually. Yeah, that's a fair point. I'm a fucking hypocrite, aren't I?